First contact with human tactics. Captain Threll of the Galactic Defense Analysis Corps stood rigid as the transport vessel completed its docking sequence at Earth's orbital military station. Her silver-scaled skin reflected the harsh artificial lighting, four eyes blinking in sequence as she adjusted to the station's atmosphere. Behind her, three fellow Xanthari analysts clutched their data tablets, their nervous energy palpable. Remember, Threll addressed her team without turning. These humans are a primitive species only recently admitted to the Galactic Assembly. Their military accomplishments against the Vraxian incursion were likely exaggerated or mere fortune. We are here to document, analyze, and classify their capabilities according to standard metrics. The docking tube pressurized with a hiss, and the door slid open to reveal a human female in a crisp blue uniform adorned with various insignia that Threll had studied but still found confusing. Captain Threll, welcome to Orbital Station Alpha. I'm Admiral Helena Chen, Earth Defense Force. The human extended a hand, a gesture Threll recognized from the cultural briefing. Threll's upper left arm extended to complete the ritual, her three-fingered hand engulfing the human's five-fingered one. Admiral Chen, the Galactic Defense Analysis Corps appreciates your cooperation in this standard assessment. Admiral Chen's lips curved upward. We're honored to be included in the Galactic Military Classification System, though I suspect you might find our methods unconventional. Threll's antenna twitched slightly. Was that amusement in the human's voice? All species have their peculiarities. Admiral, our metrics account for such variations. Of course. Chen gestured toward a transport pod. If you'll follow me, we've prepared several demonstrations and simulations for your team to observe. The journey through the station provided Threll's first true glimpse of humans in their natural environment. Unlike the sterile, ordered corridors of Xanthari vessels, this station bustled with seemingly chaotic activity. Humans moved in unpredictable patterns, conversations overlapped, and there appeared to be minimal adherence to formal protocols of movement. Your station lacks efficiency in personnel flow, noted analyst Zek, the youngest and most outspoken of Threll's team. Admiral Chen smiled. We find that allowing natural movement patterns increases overall productivity and innovation. Structured rigidity works for some species, but not for us. Threll made a note on her tablet. Early indication of cultural preference for disorder. Potential military weakness. The observation deck overlooked an enormous training arena where human soldiers maneuvered through a complex urban simulation. Threll immediately noticed the absence of standard formation protocols. This is Squad Epsilon, one of our specialized urban combat units, explained Chen. We're running them through a level 4 scenario, multiple hostiles, civilian presence, and structural hazards. Threll watched with growing confusion as the human squad split into seemingly random configurations, sometimes operating as individuals, sometimes in pairs, but rarely as a cohesive unit. They've abandoned formation integrity, observed Analyst Freeing, the team's tactical specialist. By galactic doctrine, this reduces combat effectiveness by at least 60%. As if hearing the comment, the humans below demonstrated something extraordinary. When simulated enemy fire pinned down 2 squad members, the others didn't follow standard retreat and regroup protocols. Instead, they created a series of diversionary actions that appeared uncoordinated, but somehow formed a perfect flanking maneuver. Note the apparent randomness that conceals actual coordination, Threll murmured, her professional detachment momentarily cracking. They're using chaos as camouflage for their true intentions. Admiral Chen nodded. We call it tactical improvisation. No plan survives first contact with the enemy, so we train our people to adapt instantly without waiting for orders. The simulation continued, and Threll found herself leaning forward, all 4 eyes wide as the human squad encountered a scenario designed to force retreat. A collapsed building with civilians trapped inside and enemy forces converging. They should withdraw and request specialized support, stated Vreen confidently. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. They split their equipment, reconfigured their communications array into an improvised scanner, and used their weapons' power cells to stabilize the structure. Within minutes, they had created an extraction route that the simulation parameters had deemed impossible. How did they know to do that? Demanded Zek. That solution wasn't in the scenario parameters. They didn't know, replied Chen. They figured it out on the spot. That's what humans do. Threll's antenna twitched rapidly as she updated her notes. Displays extraordinary problem-solving under pressure. Questions remain about reproducibility of results. Admiral, while impressive, this appears to be a specially trained unit. Our assessment requires observation of standard forces as well, Threll said, trying to maintain her professional skepticism. Of course, this afternoon, you'll observe our regular infantry training. But first, I thought you might appreciate seeing our strategic command simulation. The command center simulation was even more bewildering to the Xanthari team. Human officers were presented with a classic no-win scenario, defending 3 colonies with forces sufficient for only 1. Galactic doctrine was clear. Sacrifice the 2 lesser colonies to ensure the survival of the most valuable. Instead, the human commanders divided their forces in a way that conventional military science deemed suicidal, then employed deception tactics that made their forces appear 3 times larger than actual numbers. They created phantom fleets using modified communications buoys, triggered geological disturbances to channel enemy forces into natural bottlenecks, and even sacrificed major weapon systems to create convincing debris fields that masked their actual defensive positions. This defies all established military principles, whispered Vreen, his scales blanching to a pale blue. They're winning by breaking every rule we've established. Not breaking, corrected Threll, her scientific curiosity now fully engaged. Transcending. After a full day of observations, Threll's team retired to their assigned quarters to compile their findings. The room hummed with agitated discussion. Their approach lacks discipline, argued Zek. It depends too heavily on individual initiative. Yet it succeeds, countered Vreen. Their casualty rates in simulations are 40% below what our models predicted. Threll raised a hand for silence. We're missing something fundamental about how humans approach warfare. Their tactics appear chaotic, but achieve ordered results. Their strategies seem irrational, but consistently succeed against overwhelming odds. Perhaps, suggested Analyst Moore, who had been quiet until now, we're applying the wrong analytical framework. We measure military effectiveness by predictability and reproducibility of outcomes. Humans seem to measure it by adaptability and innovation. Threll's antenna stood rigid as the insight struck her. That's it, Moore. We've been classifying their apparent disorder as a weakness, but it's deliberately cultivated. They're not just tolerating chaos, they're weaponizing it. The next morning, Threll requested something unexpected, to participate in a human training simulation herself. Admiral Chen seemed surprised but agreed readily. We can set up a simplified version for your physiological capabilities, Chen offered. No, Threll insisted. I wish to experience what your soldiers experience. Only then can I truly understand. Hours later, Threll emerged from the simulation chamber, her silvery exoskeleton covered in harmless training paint, and her breathing labored. The experience had been illuminating and humbling. Your conclusions, Captain? Asked Chen, offering a hydration pouch specially formulated for Xanthari physiology. Humans don't fight like any species I've encountered, Threll admitted. When faced with an impossible situation, most species either follow doctrine to minimize losses or retreat to preserve forces. Humans transform the situation itself. Chen nodded. We call it changing the conditions of the test. It's deeply embedded in our approach to challenges. It's more than that, Threll said, her voice lowering. Your species seems to possess a unique relationship with chaos. You don't just adapt to it. You generate it, direct it, and thrive within it. The Galactic classification system has no category for this approach. Then perhaps, suggested Chen with that same slight curve of her lips, you'll need to create one. That evening, Threll sent an encrypted preliminary report to Galactic Command with an unprecedented recommendation: the creation of an entirely new classification category for human military capabilities. She labeled it Chaos Manipulation Warfare and flagged it for immediate high-level review. The response came within hours, a direct communication from Grand Marshal Zervac himself. His scaled face filled the secure view screen, expression grim. Captain Threll, your preliminary findings are disturbing. The High Command requires further verification of these supposed capabilities. Therefore, you are to implement Evaluation Protocol Omega. Threll's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in surprise. Marshal, Protocol Omega is reserved for species that represent potential strategic threats to galactic security. Precisely. The Marshal's expression remained stony. If humans can indeed do what your report suggests, manipulate chaos as a tactical advantage, then we must know the full extent of their capabilities. Understood, Marshal. I'll make the necessary arrangements. After the transmission ended, Threll stood motionless, contemplating the implications. Protocol Omega wasn't just an evaluation. It was a test designed to be unbeatable, to find the breaking point of any species' military capacity. No civilization had ever passed it. Tomorrow, she would have to inform Admiral Chen that the humans were about to face the ultimate military challenge. And despite everything she'd observed, Threll couldn't help but wonder if even human adaptability had limits. The question wasn't academic anymore. The Galactic Assembly was now officially concerned about humanity's potential. What had begun as a routine classification exercise had become something far more consequential. And somewhere deep in her analytical mind, Threll found herself hoping that the humans would once again do the impossible. The ultimate test. The orbital station's strategic briefing room fell silent as Captain Threll explained Protocol Omega to Admiral Chen. The human's expression remained unreadable, though Threll noticed a slight tensing around her eyes. "Let me understand correctly," Chen said finally. "Your Galactic Command has classified us as a potential strategic concern and wants to subject us to a military challenge that no species has ever passed." "That is accurate," Threll confirmed, her antenna rigid with formal posture. "I should clarify that this is standard procedure for any species demonstrating unexpected capabilities." Chen's lips quirked upward. "In other words, we scared them." Threll struggled to maintain her professional detachment. The Marshal expressed concern, not fear. "In my experience, those are often the same thing." Chen tapped her communication device. "Commander Varric, please report to Strategic Briefing 1 immediately." While they waited, Threll felt compelled to offer more explanation. "Admiral, Protocol Omega isn't designed to be punitive. It's an assessment tool, albeit an extreme one. Designed to identify breaking points," Chen finished. "To find the limits of our capabilities." "Yes." The door slid open to admit a human male of medium height with dark skin and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in the room simultaneously. His uniform lacked the ornate insignia of the admirals, but carried an unmistakable air of authority. "Commander Eli Varric, Special Tactical Operations," Chen introduced him. "Commander, Captain Threll has just informed me that the Galactic Assembly wishes to administer their Protocol Omega assessment to evaluate our military capabilities." Varric's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Not anxiety, Threll realized with surprise, but interest. "Parameters?" he asked simply. Threll activated her tablet. "A simulation will be created using Galactic Assembly standard protocols. Your forces will face a scenario classified as strategically unwinnable. Your performance will be measured not on victory, which is designed to be impossible, but on resilience, resourcefulness, and duration of resistance." "Who determines what's unwinnable?" Varric asked, his tone casual but his gaze intense. The question caught Threll off guard. In thousands of Protocol Omega assessments, no species had ever questioned the fundamental premise. The parameters are established by the Galactic Defense Strategic AL, incorporating data from millions of conflict scenarios across known space, she explained. So it's based on historical data and known tactical approaches, Varric noted. Interesting. Something in his tone made Threll's scales ripple with unease. Commander, I must emphasize that this simulation has been refined over centuries. It adapts dynamically to counter any conventional strategy. Conventional. Right. Varric exchanged a glance with Admiral Chen that Threll couldn't interpret. How soon can we begin? My team can have the simulation ready by tomorrow. You'll be allowed to select a team of 20 operators for the exercise. I'll need just 5, Varric said. Even Admiral Chen looked surprised. Commander, are you certain? The standard complement 4. 5 is sufficient. Admiral. Varric's confidence was absolute. Too many moving parts complicates the execution of what I have in mind. Threll made notes on her tablet, increasingly intrigued by this human's approach. Reducing force strength by 75% against an unwinnable scenario seemed beyond irrational. It appeared deliberately self-sabotaging. The next morning, Threll and her analysis team prepared the simulation chamber according to Protocol Omega specifications. The scenario was a classic of galactic military theory, defending a critical installation against an enemy force with overwhelming numerical and technological superiority, limited resources, and no possibility of reinforcement or escape. Statistically, the maximum survival time achieved by any species was 14 standard time units, Analyst Vreen noted as they calibrated the parameters. The Drafar military elite managed to execute a fighting retreat that delayed their inevitable defeat. What's the historical average? Asked Moore. 3.6 time units, replied Zek. Most species recognize the futility of the scenario within the first time unit and shift to minimizing casualties rather than seeking tactical advantage. Threll watched as Commander Varric entered with his chosen team. 3 males and 2 females, all wearing standard Earth Defense Force combat gear rather than specialized equipment. They moved with quiet confidence, studying the simulation chamber with professional interest. Commander Varric, Threll greeted him formally. The simulation parameters have been loaded according to Protocol Omega standards. Your objective is to defend the central command node for as long as possible against overwhelming force. The simulation will end when the node is captured or destroyed, or when your entire team is incapacitated. Varric nodded, his expression betraying nothing. Understood. Is there any restriction on what tactics we can employ? Again, an unexpected question. The simulation is designed to test your natural tactical instincts. You may use any approach you deem appropriate, though I should note that all conventional strategies have been analyzed and countered within the simulation parameters. Conventional. You keep using that word. Varric smiled slightly. Let's get started. Threll and her team retreated to the observation room as the humans took their positions around the virtual command node. The simulation engaged with a low hum, reality dissolving around the humans as the virtual battlefield constructed itself. For the first few minutes, everything proceeded according to standard metrics. The humans established defensive positions, allocated their limited resources, and prepared for the initial wave of simulated attackers. Threll's team recorded baseline data on their reaction times, coordination, and tactical positioning. Their setup is actually quite orthodox, noted Vreen with slight disappointment. Standard perimeter defense with overlapping fields of fire. Wait, Threll said, her antenna twitching. Something's not right. They've left the eastern approach completely undefended. As they watched, Varric issued commands that seemed to make no tactical sense. Rather than reinforcing their perimeter as the first wave of attackers approached, the humans abandoned their defensive positions entirely. What are they doing? Zek's voice rose in confusion. They're exposing the command node deliberately. The simulation registered the apparent tactical blunder and redirected the attacking force toward the undefended eastern approach. The humans should have been overwhelmed within minutes. Instead, something extraordinary happened. As the simulated attackers converged on the seemingly abandoned command node, they triggered a cascade of failures in their own systems. Their weapons malfunctioned, communication channels filled with contradictory orders, and targeting systems identified friendly units as hostile. They've reprogrammed the command node itself, Thrall realized with shock. They've turned it into a weapon against its own defenders. One of Eric's team, a female with short golden hair, had somehow reconfigured the node's security protocols to broadcast false authentication codes. Another team member had reversed the defensive shield harmonics to create a resonance field that disrupted the attacker's technology. "This isn't in the simulation parameters," protested Zek. "They can't do this." "Apparently they can," countered Moore. "Notice how they're not actually fighting the enemy directly. They're changing the environmental conditions of the battlefield itself." The simulation adjusted, as it was designed to do, sending in specialized units immune to the electronic warfare tactics. The humans simply shifted their approach again. Instead of defending against these new attackers, they abandoned the command node entirely. "They've conceded defeat," Vreen said with obvious relief. "The simulation will register this as a failure." "No," Thrall said slowly, watching Varric's movements with growing fascination. "They haven't conceded anything." The humans had split into 3 teams, each one leading a portion of the attacking force away from the command node on wild pursuits. Meanwhile, Varric himself had done something unprecedented. He had physically disconnected the command node's central processing core and was carrying it with him. The simulation parameters define defense of the node's location, Thrall explained, her voice filled with wonder. "There's nothing in the protocols about the node itself being mobile." "That's cheating," exclaimed Zek. "That's innovation," corrected Thrall. "They've redefined the parameters of the mission." Hour after hour, the simulation continued far beyond the expected time frame. The humans employed tactics that ranged from the unorthodox to the seemingly nonsensical, yet each one achieved results that the simulation hadn't predicted. They created decoy command nodes, established false data trails, and at one point deliberately triggered a system overload that temporarily blinded all sensor systems on the battlefield. When the simulation finally ended after 23 standard time units, shattering all previous records, it wasn't because the humans had been defeated. It was because they had found a way to transmit the command node's core functions to a dispersed network that couldn't be captured or destroyed as a single entity. Commander Varric stepped out of the simulation chamber, his team looking tired but satisfied. "Interesting challenge," he remarked casually to Thrall. "Though I think we might have broken your scoring system." "You've done more than that," Thrall replied, her scientific detachment completely abandoned. "You've invalidated the entire premise of Protocol Omega." Admiral Chen, who had been observing silently, now stepped forward. "Captain Thrall, I believe your assessment is complete. What conclusions will you report to your Galactic Command?" Thrall considered the question carefully. "That humans represent something unique in our experience. You don't approach warfare as a contest of strength against strength or even tactics against tactics. You rewrite the rules of engagement themselves. We call it thinking outside the box," Varric said with a slight smile. "A curious idiom," noted Thrall. "It implies that conventional thinking is confined within arbitrary boundaries." "Exactly." Chen's expression was serious now. "Captain, your Protocol Omega was designed to find our breaking point. What you've discovered instead is that humans don't break. We transform. When the rules make victory impossible, we change the rules." Later that evening, Thrall composed her final report to Galactic Command. Her fingers hesitated over the classification matrix, uncertain how to categorize what she had witnessed. No existing military taxonomy adequately captured the human approach. Finally, she created an entirely new category: paradigm shift warfare. In her detailed analysis, she wrote, "Humans do not merely adapt to battlefield conditions, they actively reshape them to their advantage. When facing superior force, They do not seek to match strength with strength, but instead transform the nature of the engagement itself. This represents not just a tactical innovation, but a fundamental reconception of warfare that our current strategic models cannot account for. Recommendation: immediate revision of galactic defense doctrines to incorporate these findings. The humans do not think as we do, and conventional metrics fail to capture their true capabilities. They do not recognize impossible scenarios as we define them, instead treating each challenge as a puzzle with an undiscovered solution. Warning: any conflict with humanity based on conventional force calculations would be dangerously misleading. Their true strength lies not in their technology or numbers, but in their cognitive approach to warfare itself, what they term the human war mind. Final assessment: humanity represents not a threat to galactic security, but an opportunity for unprecedented advancement in our understanding of strategic thinking. I strongly recommend establishing a permanent joint military research initiative rather than classification as a potential adversary. As Threll transmitted her report, she gazed out at the Earth visible through the station's observation window. Such an unassuming planet for a species that had just rewritten centuries of galactic military doctrine. The humans had a saying she had encountered in her cultural briefing: necessity is the mother of invention. Perhaps, Threll reflected, that was the essence of humanity's unique relationship with chaos and challenge. Where other species saw impossibility, humans saw necessity, and necessity drove them to invent new possibilities. Whatever the Galactic Assembly decided, one thing was certain: the universe had become a much more interesting place with humanity's emergence onto the cosmic stage. And if there was one thing Threll had learned about humans, it was that they were just getting started.